present the findings of workshop. Just in terms of the brand, you'll hear a lot more about it throughout the day that we've been conducting over the past 6 months. Going through the islands, and we have with us also from the government of St. Lucia, Mr. Fabian Lewis, who is from the Ministry of Infrastructure, Ports, Energy and Industry. I think he stepped outside to maybe probably be with us in a short while. Right. So I think to get the ball rolling, what I'd like to do is to invite Ms. Monique Bolemin, who is the Director of EKWA, to offer some remarks and to welcome the rest of you. And from there, we'll go on to hear some more presentations from some of the key experts who've been working in this field to share with us some of the information that we've been able to gather.
Project for the development of renewable energy, marine in tidal and wave energy in the Eastern Caribbean region. I'm very happy to be here in St. Lucia and to present you with our preliminary conclusions and renewable energy marine infrastructure in the Eastern bases and using based on international cooperation between the different Caribbean territories. So I would like to introduce the Mr. Melfort Nicholas, who is the Minister of Energy of Antigua and Barbuda, and owner of. So, Minister Nicholas, would you like to make an introduction, please? Thank you.
Good morning, all. Pleasant, sunny Caribbean morning to everyone. I'd like to first start by saying to the St. Lucians in the house, it may sound funny that I'm saying that, given that I'm Minister of State in Antigua, but I did work with telecommunications in this region and happened to have spent quite a bit of time in the mid-2000 era here in St. Lucia, right in this very location, when I worked with Cable and Wireless. So it's a place that has many pleasant memories for me. So it's nice to be back here. As I've just indicated, I am one of those persons who have come to public life having spent quite a bit of time in the private sector, and I do pride myself as bringing that perspective and that whole approach to public affairs, leveraging a lot of my private 14, and have been a minister of government since. At the last general elections in Antigua in early this year, and energy. Since that time, over the last 6 months, in terms of understanding the lay of the land regarding our commitment towards reducing our fossil fuel dependency in the energy sector. It's importance. Just as a highlight is to say that there are a number of options available with challenges with respect to the funding gap that is bound to confront us as we see, and all of the renewable energy options, and they're not universal. We have the challenge of having sufficient battery backup, and because of the whole disruption and the shortage of resources in the supply chain, finding batteries to support the utility level installation of solar, wind, we have an abundance of trade wind. And of course, for those of us who have toward a sensible position where we can begin to look at scoping a framework, that's a sensible position where we can begin to look at scoping a framework that not only can we complete the research, but where there are pilot projects to be done, to can embrace that and get to the front of the line. So I'm delighted to be here. I'm looking forward to a fruitful discussion. And I noticed that we have some young participants in the audience. With these young persons, there are some fertile minds that are waiting to be fed. And I'm hoping that I'll be of some use to them as well. So thank you very much, and I look forward to the deliberations for the balance of the day.
Who's not just has an interest in the field, but somebody who's very familiar with the issues of renewable energy, obviously given his experience in that whole technology sector, as well as his definite interest in how renewable energy is going to benefit the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, Ms. Judith Ephraim, who is the director of the Sustainable Energy Unit, has had a very keen interest in developing the renewable energy sector. And as the regional organization, the sub-regional organization for the Caribbean, they're members to that discussion. And not only that too, but the fact that they also have a very strong oceans program. We are going to transition our resources in the ocean sector into more useful frame to give us some opening remarks from the OECS. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The OECS Commission is indeed pleased to be at this gathering here today, which brings together two very important attendees, the perspectives on this project and indeed on marine energy from your particular stance. Renewable energy and ocean governance are very important because we recognize that these are priorities for small island developing states. I think over the past couple of years, so as Minister would have shared, most of the countries are beginning to move into solar energy, beginning to move into wind energy where it's possible. Even geothermal energy is becoming more of a reality to satisfy our energy needs and ensure that we can move on in terms of advancing the whole concept of the blue economy for us and ensuring that we have innovation that emerging needs. I'm very pleased as well to see that we have at this workshop, both the youth. We think that it's important in getting all players from the very beginning so that they can share their perspectives, not afraid to, navigate new waters and to explore new opportunities that will redound to our benefit. We are also pleased that this is part of the Interreg cooperation because, as you would know, the OECS seeks to support not only our English-speaking member states, but also our French departments. And so this cooperation enables us to work a little closer together, to share a joint goal, and to really explore how we can support each other in addressing the same challenges that we face. We have had some experience with the Interreg, and we see this as an partnership, share best practices, and again, cement our cooperation for further achievement of our shared goals. So, just to say that we welcome this opportunity to learn about some fruitful deliberations, and we look forward to together finding solutions ocean governance for the successful development of our small island developing states in the Caribbean. So I thank you and I wish you successful deliberations.
Ms. Monique Bowman, as I said earlier on, she's the director of EKWA, the rest of the team, and how we are going to be going forward and making it.
I'm going to introduce the project here and what's EMR Eastern job, the agenda. What we're going to be Medford Nicholas, the Minister of Energy, and Ephraim Judith, from project manager from the OECS, who honored us of her attendance and participation to this workshop. A loop and from with the attendance of sport. So we started a little bit late, but then we will have, after the coffee break, some discussion, Q&As, and the recommendations that we preconize to go further. And this afternoon we'll have two roundtables, one on what could be the mechanism or the way we could organize and cooperate together to develop this blue energy. And we will end up hopefully with like, you know, a relief at 4:30. No, I'm kidding. You're going to love it. You won't be able, you know, you won't want to stop. So the blue economy, let me try to present you a little bit, you know, what is our project. So our project is a European project. It's funded by the European Regional Development Fund, and which purpose is to regional integration, between the different islands, and also support some priorities in terms of renewable energy. So you see on the left side all the axes, the priority of the European Union in terms of jobs. Those projects has created jobs new, you know, in the new blue economy, targeting the youth, also prioritizing innovation, meaning the new technology, new governance, hurricane, and we in the Caribbean, we are at the forefront, you know, like energy transition. The eligible territories are listed over there. So you see that we have the 2 French islands, which I'm from the 2, believe it or not. So you have Antigua, Barbuda, Anguilla, Dominica, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, of course, and British Virgin Islands, and Grenada. And so Barbados was not initially included, but during our workshop in Guadeloupe, the Interreg, meaning the people who are in charge of managing this European fund, said, no, you should include Barbados. So Barbados will be the 12th eligible country for the Interreg program and will be therefore included into our study. So right away, what's the context here? Okay, here you see the share in the CARICOM countries. And you can see that the blue represent in 2020, what's the share of renewable into the mix. The red one is the national objectives of each country, 30, meaning 7 years. And the dark blue column is the 2027 2027 objective of the CARICOM. And so you see that for some country, they're far from. It will require a big effort, massive change of paradigm to try to reach these objectives. Now, Corinne, tu voulais parler là-dessus? Corinne, you want to mention something on this slide because you don't want to? Okay, it's up to you. So anyway, what is, you know, the price of the kilowatt in the Caribbean is one of the most expensive in the world. And a lot of people don't know that. Population are not aware of it, but this is a fact. And it's been increasing. So the dependence on fossil oil, dependence of, to be subjected to the volatility of the oil price, it's making the Caribbean population to one of the most expensive electricity in the world. So I think that politically, and every stakeholders, could go to a quarter is on the generator that you're paying, the oil that they use to put the generator on when you have power outage or something like that. So this is really issues. There's a lot of things going on. So based on this, we know that renewable energy is not even questioned that, should be really be taken the priority in any energy, development policy. I took a special flight to come here because there is no commercial line, okay? Which is 20 minutes. So if you try to book a ticket to go there, it's 7 hours. Okay, so what are we, that's a subject too. And not only that, for the youth too. I mean, you cannot travel, it's too expensive. Okay, so you can go to London, you can go to New York, but you cannot go next door. Okay, so some mobility, some flexibility, and be cheaper. Okay, where is JetBlue? Where is, railing? When of fossil oil, you understood that there was something that we also promoting and trying to reach the energy. Try to federate, to unite ourselves around, promising projects. Okay, so meaning, thinking, but, trying to find pilot project where everybody could adhere to, which is, since our approach is definitely inclusive. And of course, trying to boost the development of the blue economy. So what we're trying to do, so we are here to, our mission, the ultimate result of our to establish a pre-feasibility study. So pre-feasibility study is not what's feasible. It's not a specific project. Develop projects that are sustainable in a long time, that provide quality service, and that, get the adhesion of all the people affected, including, the user, the fishermen, the industrial actors, and so on and so forth. So therefore, we try to identify pilot projects too. Okay, we don't, we near each other. So it's not like, in our little, ancillary, Mrs. Ephraim talked eloquently about the fact that, we small territories, but we have like big maritime space. That's why we should use it, and there's a rich potential for that. So let's try to, what are the options? Are we going to structure, financially and contractually, how we can structure for the project? So we, in our study, this is what we're trying to do. Develop a roadmap to implement these projects. Develop also training. And I think that, here are our young attendees, almost feminine, by the way. I don't see you. To the fact that we're trying also to develop curriculum and participate to the roundtable, and we can talk about the way we can develop regional cooperation. Really try to include everybody who is affected, who is interested, to define the strategy of this, and also, even if I said already, like trying to develop ways we can cooperate with each other. What will be the instance, the way, it could be flexible, but how we can coordinate and cooperate between the different islands. And of course, organizing workshops. You saw that this is what we're doing right now. We did one in Guadeloupe. We do one today, and in last quarter of 2023. So in terms of the sharing of resource and capacity and the cooperation between the island with the different topics and fields that where we could cooperate. And now we're trying to, not retrying, I'm presenting, and where we're from. So Hin and Hill, Mr. Radford Hill, who doesn't hear me right now, but who is the partner of the project, representing Antigua and Barbuda, Equa Consulting here, myself in Guadeloupe, and David Simmons, who made the introduction to this workshop from St. So in terms of priority, I think that, we fill all the boxes, and, I'm very proud of that, actually, and trying to use young, motivated, dedicated, very skilled professional people. In a team, if we accumulate the experience of the team, you have everywhere. We covered all the continents in the world. And I think that the presentation you're going to have show the expertise and the dedication and motivation of the team members. Thank you. Now I leave the discussion of the technical aspects of our study, which would be carried out by Céline Caz, sorry.
Thank you, Monique. Good morning to everyone. I'm Bruno Lemort. I'm the Chief Technical Officer at IS, Energy Marine Development. And I would like to show you this typical layout of marine renewable energy system. So this is installed offshore at a limited distance. We have to install these devices, also two different things that we have explored in the study. This device is the device that will convert the mechanical energy from the waves or from the tidal current in electricity. And we have to install as well a subsea export cable to bring this electricity that has been produced to the shore grid. So for all this geographical the possibilities for building an onshore landing substation, there are some places where obviously it's not possible to build a new construction. We have looked at the environmental zoning, the existing uses like fishing, tourism, laser, the seabed morphology, the bathymetry, which means the water depth. And I will show you some examples of the technologies. So on the left you have the tidal energy converters technologies, which mainly are composed of the turbines, which are quite similar to the wind turbines, but under light technology that will describe a movement and convert electricity. And on the right side you have the wave energy converters technologies, which are more than 150 different technology developers in the world. Each one have his own technology. There are some main families, but you have an overview here of what can be done. So the first step was to assess the natural resource potential. Do we have enough energy in the waves or in the current to produce electricity with the technologies? So we have used a numerical together with our partners Meteolien based in to produce these dedicated maps where you can have a detailed views or where are the spots where we have the more interesting potential. And from all this information, sum up, assess based on criteria that we know, because from our discussion with the technology developers, we know what the minimum value for energy density from the waves and water speed from the current that are required to produce electricity. So we have done this assessment, and from that we have defined the spots where we will look further in detail.
Thank you, Bruno. Before going on, I just want to precise that we won't show you details of the results, of course, because we studied 11 islands. So we have just put some pictures of the methodology we followed. So after having find interest zones regarding resources, we look for potential onshore landing areas. It means we would like to find where we can install onshore substation to collect the electricity produced from the sea. So it was quite simple. We work with bibliographic data to identify it exists today which are the regulatory zones, and so for maps dedicated for each island. It was difficult to collect all the data. We know we haven't a view of what exists in each island. We did the same for other thematic like fishing, tourism, maritime traffic, all the main usages we can have in the sea, because it's important that our future projects cohabit coexist. Sorry, with what already with the people who live here. We don't want to add useful for everybody who need electricity. So we had different maps, and we made a summary at this stage, a summary of what we encountered. Sorry for my English. Then focuses on the zone of interest, where we defined there could be resources, good resources to install marine plants. So again, we just have a sum up of all the... we analyze different concerns as it is described here for all the... we evaluate on each areas different thematic. As you can see, green we estimate for the area. In orange it's moderate, and in red it's hard to check, but the common main points, main concerns we have around the islands will be through herbarium and mangroves for the land onshore connection. And also we will have, of course, a great concerns on sargassum. Unfortunately, we have to deal with that lifespan with sargassum. So many things to have in mind to choose the best places for the future projects.
Thank you, Céline. So we have looked previously in the environmental aspects, so that a project of marine renewable energy will comply with the protection of the environment. We have looked to the uses, so that we can also coexist with the existing uses and the human activities. Now we'll focus more on where we can install specifically, technically, the wave energy converters or tidal energy converters. So we have to look at the bathymetry, which is the water depth, because this is something that will give you indication on what type of technologies you can use. So we have also collected data and create some maps on every island regarding the bathymetry, which you can see here. And like here, we did a summary and an assessment on all the potential. The water depth was compliant with the installation of a device. We have been also looking on the seabed conditions, which is not, let's say, criteria for choice of a site, but which gives the indication of the according to the data that we have collected. And finally, we also have gathered data from the electric island and tried to identify also for each island who are the actors in the electricity sector, so the producer, the utilities, and the regulators. These people that we have identified, these entities, will need to work with for future projects on each island. The next criteria that we have been looking for is harbors and logistics, because this kind of projects, marine renewable energy projects, require some. I will leave the floor to Thomas, which will present us his work.
Yes, are there any commercial installations for wave or type of energy output are they yielding?
Yeah. So there are, so as I mentioned, there are many companies and technology developers working in this field for many years, passing the steps of the technology development from research and development, test and trials. So for, let's say, 5 years, we see the first commercial installation in the water, coming in the water, mainly in Europe. Also in tidal energy, we can see some first arrays, commercial arrays, supplying electricity.
And how would those costs compare on a megawatt basis, let's say with solar? Because we already have an indicative cost of a megawatt of solar. How do they compare? If you can? Oh, I'm so sorry.
We will present this a bit later in the,
my apologies.
in the slides. Yeah. Thomas?
Okay, thank you, Bruno. My name is Thomas Dupera, and I'm the founder and co-founder and president of Maritime Issues. Because as was mentioned earlier, first thing is to know where we could put the devices, but then how do you bring them to the place? Do you install them? How do you manufacture them? I mean, you manufacture them outside, but then you probably have to assemble them somewhere before you put them into the water. So as was said before, we looked at 12 possible sites, at least part of the Interreg, ranging for about 1,100 kilometers from north to south, and each island or each archipelago is distant meters apart. So the question is immediately, how can these territories, how can these islands work together? And we'll speak about cooperation later in the day, but that's also an issue when we talk about logistics, because we sure have the international logistics. The devices are not built on the islands, but they have to bring them. When we talk about institutional and legal frameworks, of course, but you know that more than I do, have different status, of course, independent states, some European regions, and some and one bridge overseas territory in our panel of possible islands. When we talk about maritime issues, and we first have to look at harbors. I mean, where are they located compared to the possible area for these devices, being wave or tidal energy. So where the harbor is located is, of course, paramount. Then we have to look at the infrastructures and services possibilities again, and we'll, of course, have to then look at the exactly on the weight of the devices. Then some harbors might be more suitable than others. Devices, you want to have a place where you can work safely, and of course most harbors having international connections comply with the ISPS codes, but that's definitely an issue when it will come to start the pilot project. And maritime related issues, then we also have to look at on-land related issues close to the harbor. I mean, be it immediately in the harbor with on a quayside, or not too far away, where we could both, I mean, well, handle the devices, store some equipment, some of the devices, and assemble them before you put them back into the water. As Bruno or Celine or both, I think, were mentioning, it's important to look, of course, at the existing uses in the water. I mean, users to come to these places, fishing. In some places, you can actually fish. Maritime uses being recreational boating, of course, regular shipping lines between islands or from overseas. And the environmental issues have been presented before. So, of course, we have to look at marine protected areas and other environmental protected areas. So how did we do it? Well, it was both and the different islands. So we could have sort of an ID card of each harbor that we contemplated or contemplated. And again, these are some of the items that I discussed with you, being of course, the maximum vessel size that can come to the harbor. Mention also video surveillance, port and police regulation. This is quite important as well, and some more technical aspects. Basically, do you need a crane, or can you just roll from? Important as well, because once you bring these devices, which can be pretty heavy, then you have to put them on the water, on the where you want them to produce electricity, and so you need to have some barging equipment, services, and experience to safely implement. Each harbor we had with this ID card. We also said you have small islands, but you have big exclusive economic zones. So yes, for each territory, we drew a map of the possible marine renewable energy projects. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions for the multi-criteria, so take everything, and then what do we do with it?
Identified in Antigua something around the Crabs Peninsula, far from the commune of Petit Canal in the east coast of Guadeloupe. The same in Martinique, in the
Okay, so for your
because we in the streaming here. So by the way, we I guess you give us the authorization of recording this conference, a recording of this seminar.
Based on what you showed that in St. Lucia you're looking at Dennery, right? And that's in the fishing port area. Okay, so I have a question. So Dennery is known for flooding and whatnot. And so when you showed the diagram, you had anchoring and the lines, and then you had I don't remember the name, but you had a machine like close whatnot. It was like, I forget the design, but then the stations before it goes to the grid, that station. So
you talked about the grid connection? No.
The substation, I think it was.
This part?
No, sorry.
Well,
right. So the onshore substation. So
yeah.
would the be a problem or not?
Thank you for the question. And we also need to have a local consultation and discussion. So this kind of knowledge of the territory that people have is very useful as a feedback for us. In Dennery, of course, we will have to take this flooding topic into account. At the moment, we have identified Dennery because the resource is good for the wave on the shore. Bathymetry is compliant with installation as well of devices. Electricity, the fishermen, they have these ice machines and these kind of things that we know that they have needs for electricity over there. But of course, the study is not completed, so other topics that we will have to look further.
Thank you very much for some very interesting issues that you have shared. I wish my colleagues from Ocean Governance were actually here, because I have a whole list of questions, not to scare you out. But just to follow on what the young lady was speaking of, number one, I wanted to know, I noticed that so I'm not sure. And secondly, to follow up on what she was speaking, into hurricanes and insurance, I know you have to do the feasibility studies, but just some preliminary comments if you could respond to those types of things.
So hurricanes, especially on the Atlantic side, and in terms of the technology, what measures have already been put in place for insurance?
Okay, so I will talk about the technical, and the insurance is addressed a bit later in the presentation. For the technical aspect, the device that we put in the water, the anchoring and so on, the worst case in the last 100 years. That's how are the design, the wave energy converters and the anchoring, because it's also a case. Hurricanes, they are taking into account in the design as the worst case scenario. So sometimes we oversize things, but it's for the safety issues. And the insurance, Monique will address the...
Simon Delage from the UECS. Sargassum, and I know that all the sites, they are on the Atlantic coast, which is the coast that is the most impacted by sargassum. So I would like you to tell us a bit more about the risk that are posed by... I know that you're not going to solve the sargassum problem. I'm talking about the impact on the station. Thank you.
So it's a topic that it's not very explored yet. We are looking for some research works, but do not have found so many answers to those questions. To look into, we know that sargassum are corrosive, but in the same time, the devices that we are talking about, they are designed to live for 25 years. The thing that could have an impact is if we have an accumulation of sargassum on the device themselves, we don't know how they will continue to operate. So one of the things we have in mind is to explore, to add another function to the marine renewable energy. It will be a kind of protection or collection of sargassum before they arrive to the device. We know that they have some things putting in place, experimental net for collection. In Martinique, for example, they are starting that. We have to look at this more in detail. But yeah, there is something very specific to the Caribbean area, and there have not been very detailed research works at the moment. It will also depend on the type of technology. Some technology are under marine, some other are floating, so yeah, we have to look at that.
Yeah, question here?
I'm just curious as to, oh, apologies, the utility St. Lucia Electricity Services. Just curious as to why all of the prototypes, the pilots are wave and none are tidal. I don't think I heard that.
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have looked at both resources. It's the result of all the mixed criteria that when we put all together, there are some tidal energy projects, but with all the other criteria, especially the bathymetry, because the tidal energy converter, most of the time they are installed at the bottom of the seabed, and they need a certain water depth above them. And at the moment, we have not identified and the current speed. We have not. In generally, the current and the tide seabed, you find very specific sites, and the wave energy is much more homogeneous. When it comes for the east coast, on all the islands, you have a larger choice of sites to use wave energy.
So as Bruno explained, it's a mix of all these criteria.
So if we are okay with the questions, no, still one there.
As we see it, is have the wave resource, some other tidal resource, and some other have a good seaport. Some other have very huge universities. Some other have workers, marine electricity, for example. We need all this. and resources, and to make run the economy, not only the electricity. So the other island, maybe they will be after, but anyway they will participate. Okay.
Maybe if I can add also, the other islands can participate in the cooperation. We'll talk about cooperation this afternoon.
Thank you very much. I'm David Yawson from UWI, the University of the West Indies, KVL campus. And I have very simple questions that facilitate the process. I think we can identify the numbers and the pillars that can be integrated into the process right from the outset to support this process. Not sure if at this stage we are able to estimate the potential maximum, and at this stage are we thinking of ways in which the 4 different sites that have been identified, room for pooled or sharing of whatever energy that is generated, or it will be per country basis? And how do you envision going forward so that all of us, wherever we need to speak about this, we have something that...
Thank you. Somebody wants to answer this question?
Just talking about the electricity production. At the moment, we have not put a defined technology in front of the resource that we have assessed. So we know that there are potential for energy on the 4 pilot sites and on others maybe later. But we have not assessed because we have not doing the size. It will all depend on also the capacity of the electricity grid. How much can we inject on the grid, and we want to fit the production with the local needs. So we have not figures at the moment of how much energy this kind of projects use. It will all depend on the further discussion.
And also on the sargassum, I am glad to tell you that as SEMIs, we do sargassum forecasting. And potentially that could be helpful. We're looking for resources to scale this up for the entire Caribbean arch. So we will be happy to cooperate on this. So we create that time persons know how much sargassum coming in at any point in time. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I thought you were turning all the sargassum into rum in Barbados. There's a project on rum and sargassum. I thought that's what you were doing. That would be interesting. Yes. No, I just wanted to add on the regional issue. Well, there's a roundtable later this afternoon where we're going to be talking on opportunities for regional cooperation in the renewable energy sector. And we'll also have, so we don't envisage doing anything new to, reinvent the wheel as far as that is concerned, but to work with those existing institutions. Thanks. As that is concerned, but to work with those existing institutions. Thanks.
Yeah, next time when you talk, if you want to be filmed, you have to be upfront, okay? I suggest that either we take a break because we're late, or we do the legal thing now so you can digest it, or you take a deep breath, and take a break, and then we tackle the legal issues. It's up to you. So we make the break now? Okay. So thank you very much. See you in 10 minutes.
So to illustrate, moi je sais pas. I can't, okay, I'm going to deal, you know. So to illustrate my, okay. The legal and institutional landscape. The legal landscape is this. Okay, this is all the norms, and this is the basic one. I'm not talking about insurance law for at one point. So you have to differentiate between specific sectoral laws and regulations, electricity generation, electricity development, renewable. Sometimes you have this, you have corporate law, you have labor law, you recruit people, you have urban law, land law, which is very interesting because in this particular, this is on the water. So, a lot of islands, and, Mrs. Ephraim, underline it, territory. So land law is crucial for any investment and infrastructure projects. Now you have, the sea, island over, is littoral, is like, is territory. The seabed, you don't have that between the islands. So, meaning you have like some limits, boundaries between the islands, which have been negotiated, okay? But it's, because of the proximity, when you're going to install and develop infrastructure, whatever they are, they necessarily have an impact on it, okay? So that's why these projects are necessarily regional. So environmental law, PPPs, are we including private sector participation? If participation is called, they have to make contractual arrangement with the public authorities. You're talking about, like sovereignty on the sea, so it's public space. And therefore, you need to have like this kind of arrangement with the private sector. You also have, but we can see it later on, arrangement with the private sector for developing within a same structure, corporate structure, these kind of project. So, in terms of institutional framework, this is kind of standard, but you have like on one side, you have the public one. So all the ministries and administrative system whereby the collectivities, the city, municipalities are in charge of their space, deliver permits and authorization. And sometimes it's difficult because they not necessarily assess, the way to which extent they can deliver this permit, they can assess the implication of it. You have a lot of stakeholders, administrative ones, or, public acceptability of the population concern that, to fishermen or others, that this is benefit from it. And that's a lot of work, okay? So, a little idea of this kind of project. So you have, when we talk about training, it's not only, geared toward, meaning if it's not in law, it has to be somewhere. Meaning you put it in the contract, and if it works, first of all, in the contract you can, you're flexible. Okay, this contract will be able to have like the provision in your contract that allow you to adjust, when you go further, like, so to make sure to address the issue of compliance, the issue of, allocational risk, all these topic themes. New sector is a new technology, and there's some implication that we don't even know, and that we'll be knowing it when we were doing it. Empirical, approach to adapt, to make sure that, these serve, the interest of the people, because this is the ultimate goal, improve the quality of life of the people with cheap, quality, sustainable service, energy service. Okay, and addressing at the same time issues of climate change and the terrible impact that it has on our small and islands. Public institutions, they're too much. They're too much at anyone here who will, trying to identify or very is responsible for what, and where you should address your request for. This is very difficult. So that's being to see where we can have kind of regional cooperation for and have one head or one main agency which could be dealing with a lot of issue and gathering, coordinating, because otherwise it's productive. So that's something so that's for me the main issues and challenges in terms of vehicle, meaning it's a corporation which is specific vehicle, meaning it's a corporation which is specifically incorporated, created to implement the project, to develop it, to implement the project. So who to implement the project? So who is part of this project? You have you have public, private actors. Among the public actors, you have, of course, the government. You could have, the utility, the public utility company, the different agencies in terms of, environment, and everything, and on the private sector. So, actor public, on the left is all, public authorities, and they're rolled into the project. Private, the donors, the private investors, and they are developing loan contract, and they have requirements for disbursement, diligence to see if everything is in compliance with applicable law. And you have the construction. You have to construct, you build the installation, and so you're not leasing the place in the sea, right? But you're gonna have an authorization, a permit. And you certainly is going to have some contractual arrangement, the public, authorities, and you need equipment, and meaning equipment. Sometimes you need people to provide and to guarantee liable to provide the maintenance services to make sure that this is operational. Maintenance is crucial. You see a lot of people, especially in solar panels and they're saying that the big thing here in the Caribbean, and talking about the representatives of the tourism industry, hotel industry, said, hey, we have solar panels. 2 years, 3 years afterwards, it's not working, it's dysfunctional, it doesn't provide, the energy needed. And last, what we can call the concession contract, or which is composed of the PPA, Power Purchase Agreement, key to any energy project. Meaning, whenever a developer is going to see a bank, he's going with 2 documents. He's going with a land lease, if it's on land, and he's going with PPA, because the PPA is giving the lender of the plant. And so there are some guarantees. It's very, but of all this, the PPA is crucial. This scheme is basic scheme. Of course you can have, but represent more or less 40 contracts. And takes, So now we ending the conclusion for governance. We ending our presentation on governance issues, and Karim, who is my partner at Equa Consulting, who is also a lawyer and a lawyer, comment on this slide. Karim?
Yes, I'll be brief because this is something we will discuss this afternoon in what such kind of projects must be treated as an opportunity to develop participatory schemes. And the big question is, how flexible are we regarding participatory schemes, regarding the special purpose company? The heterogeneity of the local frameworks is a problem almost everywhere, except there. There we found across islands, okay? And that's something which we find very important because, of course, we believe implicit, informal harmonization of practices across island. But this is something we're going to discuss this afternoon, harmonization through the sharing of best practices. The idea is now it is possible to involve users, and you have a very strong, by tradition, that, and they have decided to come up with a law that enables possibility that those available in the English-speaking zone. This means that we have nice rooms to exchange best practices here, because this is something we're going to discuss at length this afternoon. That includes, by the way, something I'm going to discuss with my colleague David here. Participatory scheme is something everybody talks about, but in practice we need to know how to do it, and this means that we need to come up with proper training programs so that people actually master the tools. Okay, but this is something we'll discuss this afternoon. Thank you very much.
With the last aspect of the presentation, our conclusion, our study is the economic one, and
yes, or we could say ice. Yeah, ice is good when it's warm.
Ice.
Okay, so I will present the economics aspects first, because economy is not only money. I will speak about all the aspects. We'll speak about employment, resilience, and the principles of balance, offshore wind, what we call. And we have the preliminary studies which require research and development of the development studies, in which development studies, as we were talking about with the young ladies, biology, which is ecology, which is chemistry. So we have several fields of knowledge in this preliminary study field. And then after, we deal with construction and installation, in which, as I was saying before, you can see all the mechanical engineering, so the welding, assembly, polymers work, composites work, and also one electricity, so the works of electricity inside a naval environment, so a marine environment. We will see marine junction, control command, telecom. We have many different skills that are needed. And then after the classical one, electrical substation and transportation. So because the site is at sea, so we will need boats, two systems, assembling, installation, cabling, and junction. They have classical technical fields. For the operation, so this construction installation, the duration is, let's say, less than 6 months. It depends, of course, of the size of the approach. To give an idea, it's, let's say, 2 years, 1 year and a half, 2 years for the studies, and then it depends on the administrative, what is required. But the operation is 20 years. And in this operation and so on, so you have to deal with the equipment pieces. The distribution, supervision, and maybe around this could be, after a while, the hydrogen and pressure storage and desalination that can be also accumulated around the dedicated process. What I wanted to highlight is that this operation So, and the maintenance framework for local employment. So you will have the preventive maintenance and people knowing how to do that, meaning workforce and knowledge. So that leads to circular economy. So circular economy, it's materials, but it's also on the process for electricity. When you work for electricity, you work in a big cycle. So you are also consumer of electricity. So you will win money if you are included in the you will win money by auto-producing your own electricity, and you will better manage the price of your electricity on the long run. So you will invest in the projects, you will get employment for the people of the communities, and you will get also taxes and levies on the works and on this virtuous cycle for the territorial authorities. For the private companies that are included in, when I say private companies, that's consumer. If you include electricity consumers as fisheries with, let's say, if they invest in the project, so they will create employment also, they will work on the sustainability of their activities, the companies, and that can be seaports also, because seaports also consume electricity. So they can be included in the company also. So and so they win money by auto-producing their own electricity that they can then after invest in other projects, in their projects at least for the future. That's the circular economy at the level of territorial authorities and private companies. So at the level of, but you have also the circular economy at the level of the material. So what is included in the, I am just looking where is the beginning of the cycle that has changed. Yes, the recycling. We integrate the material recycling level at the beginning when we perform the concept design of the installation. This idea of manufacturing the equipment, not only the equipment, what is outside the equipment, the assembling of the equipment, we can do it also on a local point of view, but also at the Caribbean point of view. So meaning they will iron because they are mechanics. These equipments are mechanics, more recycled at the level also of Caribbean countries. So not only inside one island. This concept of recycling needs a certain amount of material to be recycled so that to be cost effective of the Caribbean. The same for the operation, and we in the process of not only for these young ladies here. Mm-hmm. But this is six has been taken as 6 very important for the resilience of a territory. So the first one is taking safety precaution for the future. We will face we don't speak a lot about it. We know that these ladies will face the material scarcity, about aluminum, about copper, concrete, sand also, we know it, and oil. So we take it into account, not only one type, because one event, one climate event. Okay? So that's one thing. Put barriers. So to controlling electricity prices We have seen during the crisis that the electricity prices, at least in France, also in other countries, have reached a level that was really impossible to imagine. Had to cancel and to stop the buses for the schools, for example, because to inform, that's what we are doing now. So with Interreg carrying.
Disappointed in our governments is that coming out of COVID, I think they should have used this as an opportunity to kickstart a whole new green transformation. I've seen a return, so the same brown investments are what we're having, and that's a little unfortunate, but it's not too late. So, Mr. Chair, that is it. We can get the legislative, the regulatory, the capacity issues, and critically the finance issues to make it happen. Thank you.
I just want to thank Dr. Fletcher for that very interesting presentation. He covered a much wider area than we initially asked him to, but I think it's very useful in the context of what we've been discussing today. So, the Honorable Candidate Nicholas is going to present also, as said, talk on the presentation, but also any thoughts that we may have in general about the whole subject area. This was introduced to you this morning, so I don't think you need any more introduction from me at this stage.
Yes, thank you. All protocols previously observed, and let me just say to my friend and colleague, I'm not your former colleague, Jimmy. I'm still your colleague. And as you can tell from his rhetoric here just now, we miss his interaction at the regional level insofar as the digital transformation and the ICT agenda. He was truly a voice of reason and a voice of much insight in those deliberations. Let me just see a perspective of where we are in Antigua in terms of our journey towards this zero carbon and some of the national commitments that we have made. Just a little insight as to Antigua for those of you who do not know. This is the size of the country, and basically these are some of our macroeconomic indicators. I would just want to further indicate that where we are with energy at the moment, we have a total installed electrical capacity of 77 megawatts of power with a peak demand of 57. Most of which were generated by HFOs and diesel plants. For the larger plant, if it had to go offline, based on its size, or any two of the larger units would go offline, we would not be able to meet the demand, the peak demand for electricity. So what the government did back in, I think, 3 years ago, when the utility company came forward and said that they needed an additional 20 megawatts of capacity, the government had initially mandated that it had to be RE energy. And as those persons within the OECS, Antigua had embarked in 2016 on a solar initiative, but because of the challenges we have had with batteries, which I mentioned this morning, it wasn't a very good experience for us, even now. And so solar was problematic. It was a problem child. And looking at wind, that too, the time cycle for us to be able to land wind was a particular problem. And so what we made a determination on is that we would go to this transition fuel, which is LNG. And based on the PPA provider that we had already an arrangement with, they were able to produce a hybrid LNG plant that could also utilize diesel and should come live in October of this year. Having said that, it is to be understood that this is not the end of energy with Venezuela, only at the end of the day to be told that you cannot transfer any cash to Venezuela. That seemed to have been a stop. But I move on. We have approximately 13 megawatts of that troubled solar plant in Antigua. The stability of the grid, if it were dependent on that, would be a particular challenge. Across the board, based on an early initiative, megawatts of distributed renewable energy generation within the population, but that too has been stalled simply because of billing arrangement seems to have taken away the attraction for persons to make this continued investment. It's an area, now that I've assumed the responsibility for public utilities, that I've given an indication that I want to review to encourage more of this particular adoption. And of course, as you can see from the next line, we are heavily dependent on fossil fuel. Problems we have had with energy in Antigua. Almost every business in Antigua is equipped with its own standby plant. So in Barbuda, and Jimmy would be happy to know that when we moved away from, with the hurricane in 2017, we were funded with some support from our friends in the UAE, and of course even more recently. So Barbuda has approximately 70% of its energy being provided by solar, and only in the evening do we have, of course it has full battery backup as well. So Barbuda represents perhaps maybe one of the few islands, little islands, where there is this particular type of profile for utilization of energy. The rest of the slides are basically just giving you background information, but let me take this opportunity to say that insofar as what Jimmy said earlier about the limited options that we have for renewable energy, made a commitment at all of the international fora that by 2030 we should have 86% of our energy that's were put up. You had seen how far away we are from a meeting in Barbados. I was expressing quite a bit of interest in wind energy as the next alternative, the next option in the Wigton farm in Jamaica. I certainly had marine options, marine renewable energy options. I'm not sure that it makes me any happier because the unit costs of production, I was anticipating that it would be far cheaper than how. So that is something that we're going to have to discuss. I learned a long time ago in the private sector that being at the cutting edge of technology is also the bleeding edge. So robust and developed. And I had asked a question this morning, where has it been commercially implemented? And it is from those who would follow the path and to look at the best practices and to see what are the pitfalls in going one particular direction or the other. But it still does represent an option, a technology option for us as we continue to move in this particular direction. I want to pause there and to allow for the discussion to take place because I'm aware too that Jimmy has to leave us in short order. All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks again, Mr. Minister, for the presentation. Roundtables are intended to provide an opportunity not just for the panelists to have discussions among themselves. Yes, not just for the panelists themselves to have a discussion, but also the audience an opportunity to ask them certain questions based on their presentation or the presentation before I try to engage them in a discussion on some of the things that they presented. Do we have any questions in our audience? Yes.
So just wanted more of a comment than a question at this point. The conversation around technologies with technologies. And I would say that especially against the standpoint of what my good friend LCOE, it is looking at the cost of producing electricity to the injection, the point of injection grid. And there are lots of other parameters which are not taken into consideration in terms of the total system benefit and the total system cost. And I think the colleague had made a good point of showing in his last slide how the system technology, wave technology, which has a higher LCOE in the system. As a case in point, tower is cheaper than solutions that would need to be made if you are putting in large amounts of intermittent or variable solar or wind into your system to operation to go up.
Excuse me, let me just say, I just can't exit without saying thank you all for accommodating us. want to say publicly, thank you for taking all the time, because enough of what the time is for you and the lecture. You've been there, so you must know. When you hear the minister takes the time to come over here, because he sees some value in this. So,
thank you, sir.
thank you.
Yeah, so I just wanted to raise the point around LCOE and say that two things. One, all renewable energy technology is equal, and we have to look and understand what the value of each technology is to the overall system and what that means in terms of the total system benefit and total system. What really happens is that the cost of the development of the system is placed squarely on the power sale side of the system, even though that system may be providing co-benefits that are also monetizable. In the case of OTEC, there's water, there's aquaculture, and other, other co-benefits that could be monetized. But nevertheless, we are the LCOE of OTEC system based on the total cost of developing an OTEC and linking that back to a power sale that is a PPA that is going to provide all the investment back with the returns and not look at all the other pieces. The same happens with waste to energy, which is why we have no successful waste to energy projects in the CARICOM region. The waste to energy technologies are always placed on the power sale side of things or on the power sector, and there's nothing that is,
I'm going to take the opportunity to ask a question, put a question to both. I'm going to take the opportunity to ask a question, put a question to both the minister and the former minister. If I could take that liberty. Yeah, because what I was hearing this morning, and in fact, and what the minister talked about, the low part, if there's a low part of the discussion so far, is that he's not attractive right now. But I also heard Dr. Fletcher talk about the need for the funding agencies to be a lot more creative in how they provide financing. But at the same time, when we talk about new technologies, we know that governments don't necessarily invest in those technologies. We need to be more creative in terms of other opportunities for governments to step in and be more proactive in terms of funding those so that they can become more creative in dictating how that is distributed, under what circumstances and what conditions. Because if you leave it up to the private sector, invariably they'd be looking for the payback. How are they going to be repaid for the investment in those technologies? Gentlemen, any one of you wanted to comment on that? I'm particularly interested in trying to find out the extent to which there may be opportunities for governments to be a little more creative in how they want to step forward to fund some of those technologies, knowing that if they were to put their money into it, they become the authority in terms of how it can be utilized, how it can be distributed, and on what conditions.
From the standpoint, yes, from the standpoint of where I'm sitting, I do not know that with the options that are available to the government, the private sector, be it local or even regional or even international, sees the way, but the technology itself.
Technologies that have still not yet reached the point of commercial application. For a government to invest in those, again, given the limited fiscal space that they have at their disposal, it's a little difficult. If we do it on a regional scale, be it with tidal, wave, or OTEC, the transformative ability, the transformative potential of any one of these technologies is massive. And then when you start adding in your OTEC going, you work out the technology, you've made it affordable, you've made it cost effective, you can now start looking at producing green hydrogen, because you now have an excess of energy production as seawater. So can you imagine now not having to desalinate seawater before using the energy that is helping you get grid stability, have baseload power, but you're also now using the water in your ocean and you're producing green energy that can now power your cars and power so many other things. But again, that's technology that is not yet ripe. So how do we cause maybe a fund to be created to make that happen, a fund that is managed at the regional level with CCRI, with CARICOM. Those are all things that we need to look at, because it can do for us what fracking did for the United States of America. And I think that's the scope at which we have to dream. That should be one of our moonshots. But to ask any one government to do it, it's not going to happen. They don't have the fiscal space to make that happen.
So you're suggesting that it would have to be more or less at a regional level?
And as Belford said, or PPP, a public-private partnership.
Yes, yes, sure, thanks. Anybody else wanted to comment on that particular subject?
Okay, so I will have one question, one for each one of you. So you have spoken about reprogram the green finance in a proper way.
Previously, in time frame in which a window in which they operate, a 5-year window.
Yes.
But, Mr. Minister? Yes. So I think coming out from this that take to come on stream, I think you mentioned about 3 years,
Yes.
right? But the question, I think, when does the 3 years start? You see?
Yeah,
because
sure, this 3 years
they're
start.
quite keen, they're quite interested in exploring, some opportunities that exist, notwithstanding the fact that right now, or at least not within the range that most private sector entities would want to get into it. Barbuda could explore some possibility of any pilot that's going forward. What is the sort of time frame within which you envisage?
24 months.
Yes.
So we need to do it in 24 months on our side too.
Yes.
And we see at the end.
Yeah.
Okay, and for Melfort Nicholas, I have a question from Mr. Melfort. Yes, on C, Isabel.
1 second. Fortunately, Dr. Fletcher has to leave at this time. It was the only condition on which we knew that we were going to get into. We really want to just appreciate the fact that he came out. So, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we need to stay.
Yes.
Right.
That's
Thank you
right.
very much.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry for the little pause there.
So for the second question, it was for Mr. Minister Melfort Nicholas. Because you've talked about the LCOE, so the value of the project. And I wanted to highlight that you pay for this amount for the kilowatt hour. Do you value the part that remains local? Because the part of this price that is paid does not come back to the country. It goes into, so maybe it's more expensive, but we have the value for the local economy also. So maybe it's better to pay a little bit more, but it stays in the country.
Yes, I can agree with you to getting that done. At the end of the day, a significant portion of our balance of payments are due to expenditure on fossil fuel. Within the next 7 years to get to 2030, and we were to eliminate even in terms of where, still at the same time, we're speaking about making an investment in the future where we want to be competitive. And I know when Devon brought the conversation into our discussion earlier today about whether or not this renewable energy, other industries such as the production of green hydrogen or the musical instrument, and we've always depended on the byproduct.
So the European Union right now, they have a working group concentrating, targeting projects that would benefit the population in terms of, education, in terms of job, interested to know what's going on and what could be alternative funding and how to reward the funding by performance criteria. Let it be education, let it be transfer of know-how, all these kind of things, which are not necessarily economic.
Backing that ensures that the private sector gets return on its investment and ensuring that the citizens are paying a price that is affordable. The port in Antigua, the airports in Jamaica also. Exactly. So within the question, so within this context, that could have these kind of what you call deep economic benefits and which are relatively new to the market, OTEC and so wave and some of them have been raised. These technologies would then be treated within that context, within that sandbox legislation, to facilitate a test bed for these technologies to be integrated in the system. And to the minister's point, you don't want to have a situation where you're procuring in a 75 megawatt system and you're predicating that a new technology. You know, Cayman and the guys in Cayman and I, we had that conversation where there was a push to integrate 30 megawatts of OTEC into a 180 megawatt system, and I opposed it when my views were sought, because you don't want technology which is unpredicted to form a large base of your system, because if it fails, then your system could collapse. But you try to create within your system a pocket that is allowable. It's like going to bet. It doesn't affect the reliability and the stability of the system. So, you know, there are ways and means and innovative ways to kind of figure out how to get it in.
Thanks. I'm hearing a certain thing in the discussion that's coming through. And I don't know if I'm correct to say it, but you could tell me that the issue really is the ability of any new power that's been developed, how it feeds into the grid, or the extent to which it's allowed to be fed into the grid, given the fact that you have the power producers already have that monopoly on the supply of electricity. Is that the issue that we're hearing? Is that
not just the grid? I mean, in general, how do you integrate it in your energy mix? The grid being one part of the mix.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. But in terms of what's really the main constraining part is that you have the power companies who already have a certain monopoly, and that anything that is new that is brought into the mix, one has
in the power part.
Right. Okay. And that
is the case in some jurisdictions, because there is deregulation of the generation sector. So in countries where the generation sector is deregulated, that is usually prescribed by law and usually run through clearly articulated procurement processes. But even in those instances, a utility that is nervous, because utility is a grid service operator, a utility that is nervous about a significant amount of its baseload generation coming from unproven technologies can be a problem. Even if it's not required to approve, it will be a problem.
Yeah, and I asked the question because I just wanted to just share, I think, because I've been doing some research in the whole area, and I was particularly interested in initiatives that the government of Antigua partnered with the government of Samoa in talking about the whole issue of loss and damage, and introducing that as...
What really happen is that you will hear how develop the technologies in some jurisdiction elsewhere in the world, and why is it that there should be special provisions. Bottom line is the bottom line. In respect to energy, the Caribbean has to be cognizant of the fact that we will have to solve our own energy problems. Things that we find is that if you try to go through the green climate mechanisms globally, like the GCF or the Adaptation Fund, to generate resources, and Jimmy said it earlier, for financing an energy, a sustainable energy project, there are two things. One, it's like push it through adaptation. The amount of time and money that will be necessary for you to, as you said, prove the adaptation case with historical data, which oftentimes you don't have, because we're trying to right now to develop what we call an EGAP program, which is the development of an electric grid adaptation program to get adaptation money to fund the upgrades for the grid, recognizing that's vulnerable pieces of the net system to the climate and the climate impacts that are worsening. And when we sit with the climate experts to start thinking about what data is needed to create the case, it's 2 years of work and $4 or $5 million US before we can even put a proposal before the GCF. So that's why Jimmy spoke about the hoops and the things that you have to go through. I think where government, can do things quickly to help themselves, they have to, and that's why putting in place the countries and some of these areas and some of these technology areas would be useful. And governments from global public sources where those are available. A lot of times when governments get it available to us, what we do is we try to create these very small pockets of projects that are public sector owned. Because a bigger project that could have, more value, cascading value. So that is how I think,
Point, you see, And I think what the private sector need to do is to be a little more creative themselves in terms of how they could partner with governments. At the end of the day, how do you choose one particular private sector entity as opposed to others?
The government haven't set the bar.
Yes. But the discussion must take with the private sector too, because I don't think they think primarily along in the returns that they must get, on the investment, and not so much in terms of what are the benefits that would accrue over long term. Yes, we've heard about the blended finance part, et cetera, but at the same time, we're not seeing anything new or creative that address those kinds of issues. But ladies and gentlemen, I mean, the discussion is going nice, but I think we have to take cognizance of the fact that there's another session that's supposed to come through. So let me just find out if there anybody else with any questions.
There are at least two who didn't speak. You asked a question before, right? Who asked a question?
Yeah.
Maybe you can present yourself, okay?
Yeah.
They can introduce themselves and say what they are interesting, or what did you notice, or something that struck you, or something that you would like us to,
Okay. All right. Hi, my name is Anelia Hilaire. I think maybe a question that I might have is in terms of, maybe a question that I have is in terms of how much energy. So I want to know in terms of how much, I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly. Yeah, I don't know.
You want to, Cohen, you want to answer?
No, I have no question.
No, I said you want to address, the question that would be raised. Okay.
Just try to answer with simple ideas, because this is a complex system. So we deal with statistics. You have statistics during your scholarship, I think. So these systems with small waves sometime and high waves sometime, you deal with statistics. You say how many time I have this level of wave, how much time I have this other 8 of waves. There are some other factors, but I will not enter into details. It makes a wool, and you produce electricity. And when we were saying that it is more steady, it means that it varies slowly. When the sun, if you have a cloud, it varies very suddenly. And the wind varies less suddenly, but with a certain rhythm. The waves, they vary slowly. That's what is in people. They will have always the same electricity. It will not come from the same source. So you have just like a river, you come together, and
what is preventing? What's missing?
Yes.
So, okay. I thought you. What's the answer to that?
Mr. you asked a question that I also need an answer.
I'll make an effort to answer your question at the risk of being slaughtered after.
No.
Just like with every new technology that comes up, what's already existing requires a certain length of time to see it goes through certain tests. Let's work with the word test. Right? I have no that is required to with our natural issues that are happening and everything else around the world. It has proven to be able to still, just like these examples, with a technology like this.
It's time to be tested, as I said, rigorously tested over. It's been around for, a long time, because I remember when, first started, studying the whole history of international law of the sea, right? We heard the extent to which that represented a new frontier in opportunities for growing the ocean sector. And one of the things that was mentioned was ocean technology, ocean energy, wave energy, right? And what we're saying here as part of this feasibility study is that we have now looked at or we're looking at the possibility of a wave tidal cost, the average cost of a renewable sector would still be on par with our traditional sources. So that's what makes, to some extent, makes it viable, and that's what makes, to some extent, we continue the conversation, right? And taking into consideration everything, you know, the minister said in terms of the time that we need to kind of get things going, the fact is that we're doing a feasibility study, right? The next stage would be a pilot, right? I think that's been asked, everybody's asking is, how long is it going to take to get that pilot going? That would really answer a lot of the questions that were asked here today about the cost, the efficiency, and what percentage of that renewable energy mix can satisfy. You know? So I think we need to get to that next stage, but I think, and my other colleagues could probably answer that question, to what extent have we seen sufficient interest being demonstrated that would say to the funding agencies, yes, this is something, because we see a great demand, a great interest in it. You know? And I think from what we've been hearing and what we'll probably hear later on, the extent to which there may be, I think Jimmy Fletcher mentioned it, the need to look at, you know, something from a regional level. I think all that points to the fact that we need to give it some serious thought, but working with our regional partners.
Thank you very much, David.
Yes.
I think it's time to wrap up the first round table. Thanks all the speakers. Bruno, Dr. Fletcher left already, and we're gonna go to the second round table, and the idea was that, you know, that people are tired. We, you know, take a coffee and come back, and at the same time we can, you know, roll, you know, work on the second round table. So those who want to get the coffee and come back if they want, so we keep rolling and maybe end up, you know, the
tired. So you need action as much as we do. So the objective is fairly simple. David and I will discuss the possibility to develop regional renewable energy related education, but we'd like to broaden the picture because they develop regional corporations, and there is very little room left institutionally speaking. So we need to find ways to somehow gather enough skills in some place so that we can spread that across the islands and somehow harmonize informally best practices across islands. That's the idea. What is more complicated, in fact, is how we do it. Because, of course, we've had this discussion a couple of times before, David, and University of the West Indies, which is a master's program on energy transition, which is an interesting thing, because when you look at this program, it's about such and such energy, okay? It is about renewable energies in general, meaning there is not enough volume, okay, in any given renewable energy to focus a program, whether on solar, marine, and so forth. At the PhD level, very specialized. So the first question, I have two questions, and then David will say what he thinks about it, and then we will open the floor. There is this, my ideas are this, and we'll see if David agrees, because we haven't prepared that. I think it's better to have some fresh debate. My idea is this. I don't think, technically speaking, there is much that can be done today in terms of renewable energies, in terms of training on renewable energies, okay, that would justify bringing new cohorts every year. In other words, to invest in a new program, say, in marine people, do we have enough job for 300 people 10 years later? We don't know. We don't know. Maybe we will, maybe you. In academia, we know nobody is going to develop such program without a very clear demand. Well, what is left is what they did, in fact. What they did is something that is not related to technologies. It is related to the management of transition. And that's something interesting to discuss because perhaps this is the easy angle, okay? Training people to understand what the game is about, the transition game is about, okay? With modules on a number of issues related to transition, including, by the way, this morning, inclusive participation and so forth. That's one angle. The other that, we have to do it at a lower level. And they do have such program as well at the University of the West Indies, at the undergrad level, to spread some kind of common, not overlook it. I have been, as a French teacher, I have been trying for 3 years now to develop something in English on a French island, okay? It is very difficult. It is very difficult because although our education system is cheap in France, what is not cheap in Guadeloupe, what is not cheap in Guadeloupe is housing. So you could say to people like you, why don't you come to Guadeloupe? It's nice, you learn French, you have this program in English, so you can do it easily, and it's not like little by little you learn French, you immerse with your fellow students. The problem is housing. There is no program for foreign students because there's no space to accommodate foreign students. So we're facing these kind of very basic and trivial issues to actually implement such regional cooperation. And that is really disturbing because when you look at it, you could see the potential, you could see what could be done, some kind of joint diploma. There is no need to get any kind of registration. They deliver the diploma, I deliver mine. At the end of the process, it's very simple. It's a parallel system. No need to merge anything. Where it is complicated is, what is complicated in the process is logistics. What is complicated in the process is logistics, okay? So the big question is how do we do it in practice, and I haven't the answer so far. I think Dave.
Thank you very much, Karim. And it's wonderful. Good afternoon, everybody. I haven't I thought I wouldn't speak at this meeting, but it's great to be here and to relive and restate what we have discussed before. Before I respond to the question, let me indicate that in the Caribbean, in the Western Hemisphere, the Caribbean has the lowest rate of higher education enrollment in the Western Hemisphere. And if you take the Eastern Caribbean, we are at about 25% compared to about 60% in North America and around 52%. So we have to hurry up to catch up, in this race. But that is not the only thing. If you take also the higher education level, 11% of high school graduating students moving on to tertiary education, you tend to get about 10% successfully graduating. So the numbers are further reduced, and you have the further complications of gender, where in my university or my campus at Cave Hill, Barbados, you have more females accessing or complicating issues that I do not understand yet, but very interesting to me. As Karim pointed out, we have the MSc Sustainable Management at our center, which is the Center for Resource Management and Environmental Studies. This center was established in the 80s as a direct response to regional to address emerging environmental issues at the time. And we have grown from a post-diploma awarding center to today we have added MSc Renewable Energy Management. And that's, we did not focus on any particular technology. We were focusing on the mix and the transition. And how do we manage that going forward for sustainability and resilience? If you look at these numbers, I think it will be, and also the proportion of renewable energy in the Caribbean energy mix, it is not really cost effective to really try to focus on any particular technology. It's important to create a pool of personnel capable of supporting the different technologies, given specific political and socioeconomic of exchanges and regional integration and mobility. I was just saying, and I have said it elsewhere, does not exist in the Caribbean, regardless of the significant progress that has been made in integration. So you see regional institutions like CARICOM, Caribbean Community, and its institutions in different areas. We do not have educational mobility that allows students to take credit from different universities, not even within the UE, the UWI. And that is important to regional integration at the level of our young students so that they learn those different areas going forward. I think this is one thing that needs to happen. And back appropriate financing to support both student and staff mobility within the region. And the second barrier that has been pointed out is the linguistic barrier. Fortunately, and a university in Guadeloupe. But hitherto, we have had nothing to do with the French states in the Caribbean. And that is something that needs to be addressed. In terms of curriculum, yes, we can, that can run in parallel in those states, and you get then should have the possibility of moving. I think that could be personnel and students from Guadeloupe in the summer. And so with that going through bigger university architecture of MOUs and legal arrangement and credit harmonization and all of that, we have that informal space to be able to do this. And so we can stay within that sphere. We are a postgraduate center, and so our programs are entirely postgraduate, but we have undergraduate program. And again, we can work with our partners in French-speaking countries and also elsewhere to, align the objectives and the content of this program to serve a graduate level program idea of breaking the linguistic barriers that hitherto separate us. So, not to take so much time, I will say that, yes, let us work on, and we can work on that level of informal harmonization, focus on by running parallel co-developed programs in different institutions with the possibility of exchanges between those countries by students or staff members who can and who have the will to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. I'd like now to give the floor to Gardner to see if what we just discussed makes sense from a policy standpoint. No, you have something to
me? You talking to me? Doctor? I'm not a doctor. No, I just wanted to clap and said, Dr. Gardner.
Thank you very much. At least I see that woke up my friend over there in the corner. How are you doing? Good afternoon again. So let me start from where my colleague at Sermis left off, Dr. Yarson, and I will dig deep. The CARICOM region is interestingly one that is built with a that has a clear political framework that underpins it. So too does the OECS. So it's interesting that when you talk about Caribbean, oftentimes you will get in and who you talk to. So if you talk to the North Americans, Caribbean include Dominican Republic, but not Cuba, Puerto Rico, USVI, etc. If you speak to others, it's sometimes not, sometimes it includes Guyana and Suriname like it does when we talk about CARICOM. Oftentimes it's just the islands. So, the Caribbean tends to be a very fluidly defined region depending on who you talk to. And that sometimes is a bit confusing because when you're working in the Caribbean space, it then changes in terms of definition from depending on who is financing and who is supporting what. But C-CREAN countries, well, 20 in total, but 15 full members, 5 associate members that are, linked through a political union, which is the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas. The original treaty was signed in 1973, so this is the 50th anniversary of that treaty. The revised one was signed in 2001. CARICOM is really a principle of functional cooperation. It operates based on functional cooperation. So it's not like the European Union for my French colleagues, where as Melford will tell you when he comes back, that are taken at regional level that forms the basis for our decisions internally. You know, and the principle of subsidiarity allows them time to put the administrative requirements in place in order to become compliant, and there's no penalty for non-compliance. So I just set that context because it's important to understand. So within that framework, to speak to the principle of education, in particular and capacity building as a starting point, because that's where Dr. Yarson started us off. Since 2016, at the time I was in another chair in the CARICOM Secretariat as head of the energy unit there, we recognize the importance of having the universities and tertiary level vocational institutions play very forthright and defined roles within the energy transition that was emerging. In 2013, CARICOM had a common energy policy and a sustainable energy roadmap and strategy that spoke to as much as 47% of the electricity coming from renewable sources by 2027, aggregated member states. And we recognized that at the time in 2012, when that baseline was done, being at the time at 6.7%, we needed pretty much an accelerated move towards a transition which would have to be underpinned by a significant amount of capacity development. And in 2016, we therefore, and so there were a number of things we determined was necessary for that capacity development. One was that we determined that there was need for a regional center, which would serve as, if you want to call it, a repository, right, Fabian, a repository of capacity that would be able to backfill and backstop member states in respect to their capacity needs. And that's why one of the main reasons why the CCRE was established when started in 2014 in response to the energy policy and the sustainable energy roadmap and strategy. And the acceptance of the energy policy and roadmap and strategy by CARICOM 2014. And it was based on the fact that the implementation of the policy and roadmap and strategy will require defense was that the CCRE should serve as a hub for energy statistics information and able to help to fill the knowledge void and to generate mechanisms through which the relevant information necessary for a transition could from place to place, from people to people, from point to point. So those making decisions, those involved in the transition and supporting it in whatever way would have access to the best quality and quantity of information and intelligence that was necessary for them to do so. The context capacity building was a significant part of what the CCRE was intending to do. We established, even before the CCRE was legally supported in 2016, what we refer to as the Regional Universities Network for Sustainable Energy in the Caribbean. And that was within the context of, at the time, my seat in the CARICOM Secretariat headquarters. That network constitutes UWI, which is the regional university, and all the national universities in the region, from the Bahamas all the way down to Suriname. University of Bahamas, University of Belize, University of Guyana, University of Haiti, University of Technology in Jamaica, Regional Universities Network. We set them up as a loose network without there being a legal structure, but really for a functional cooperation, because we're trying to put them into a rigorous legal structure would have looked like. And within that context, the role of that network, which was guided by a steering structure, which includes the presidents or the vice chancellors at the university. It's a PVC for research. Stefan Giff, I think he left now. I can't remember who replaced him, who was the representative in the network, and other universities by their presidents and vice chancellors and so on were members. Haiti is included, managed that language gap is something that we could learn from how we have dealt with Haiti in the past, or even now within the context of the university internally, which they call GNUFR. I can't remember what it is in terms of Spanish, but it really means GNUFRE in terms of the Spanish, whatever it is. And there's also a network in the Dominican Republic that we also link this work to. And those three networks really form a triangle that I've met at times, and I've been looking at cooperation in a number of areas, including in bioenergy research, bioenergy teaching, and other areas of renewable teaching and research, including the transition and conversations around the transition. We have had in the past made effort to develop joint curricula. There are a couple of joint curricular areas that we have looked at based on need. It typically is demand driven. We developed joint curricula in a Masters of Science in Sustainable Energy and Climate Change that exists at the University of Technology now, and is already started to, has already been would be able to benefit from the curricula, which was developed with public funds from German contributions, and would be available to effects of that program, which is also, again, technology neutral, but looks more so at how the sustainable energy climate change nexus should look and what that tracks of net zero. And then, of course, we have had other more standalone programs around energy statistics and information management, which was developed at University of the West Indies, MONA, with support again from that were intended to support the countries in their energy statistics and information issues. You know, we built it as a practical program linked to the IRES, which is the International Recommendation Statistics, utilizing all other systems that we use in the CARICOM region, which was approved as the basis for energy statistics and information management by ministers of energy in 2016. And also some programs with, in terms of research on bioenergy, more around cogeneration between Belize, University of Belize, University of Guyana, and a couple of the universities in Cuba. But what is, what I agree with Dr. Yasna around, is lecturers from universities to universities to have lecturers probably, and researchers probably functioning among multiple universities. The network of students being able to move freely and transfer credits within the network, and of course, you know, how we could have those credits moving among universities in the network. That is an age-old issue, which because of the accreditation we have not been able to solve. We continue to work with the officials there to see how much we can do. We have been able to successfully do research work that was cross-disciplinary. University. We established a microgrid training facility in Jamaica at the University of the West Indies to support rural electrification and interland electrification and peri-urban electrification from microgrids, which would benefit Belize and some of the North Caribbean countries. And we have established also an equivalent one in University of Suriname. One in Mona was completed last year. The one in Suriname is expected to be commissioned in October this year, and that will support also, again, rural electrification from renewable powered microgrid like Guyana, Suriname, and Trinidad, and whichever other countries in that side of the world. So we have been doing some work around regionalization. Sometimes doesn't necessarily come from the big ticket items. Sometimes the things that are most transformative are the small things, the things that are functional in terms of how we manifest them. And that's why the principle of functional cooperation is important. What we are working towards within the context of this capacity arrangements within the center itself, outside of the training and supporting the programs, and we have used the Caribbean Examination Council as a basis to support some of the work within the secondary school systems by helping them to develop curricula in the secondary school program, because the CXC has responsibility for the secondary curricula in the Caribbean, and to help them to introduce sustainable energy matters into the Caribbean curricula in secondary schools. We have been helping the CXC to both train teachers and to revise curricula and develop new curricula, but really to focus on practicalities of how we can ensure that the capacity is beneficial to every single member state and lead to tangible megawatts in the ground. We have been pushing within the context of the secret nations with tools that are very expensive, which if you were to do them at that national level would be very difficult, very expensive, very demanding, and just do integrated resource and resilience planning one by one. And we have already supported 7 countries to do IRRPs. We are intending to support all 15 member states by next year, and the expect on the supply side or in the utilities side, but also on the demand side to look at distributed options and opportunities, do detailed demand analysis, do distribution planning, do transmission analysis, do also generation expansion plans and transmission expansion plans, everything, and look at all of this through vulnerability-led countries that you need to shift your systems to become far more dependent on technology and the demand, and the system that is delivering the electrons to them are fully at how to operate the system and manage the system. These things are understood. Make sure that we have day-ahead predictive capability on solar resources, so we can understand what will happen with a solar plant in a certain jurisdiction if there's a cloud cover coming based on weather predictions. Those kind of things are the kind of forecasting capabilities are things that we are currently building internally within the CCRE and building it so that countries can benefit from that capacity that is installed within a regional center that has able to provide those as services to all countries in the region when required. We are supporting within that context too from the planning and where would opportunities for emerging technologies like wave and tidal and OTEC and so on. How do we treat these within a basket that allows us accordingly? And then within that context, we are helping the countries with respect to the dissemination of lessons, the dissemination of knowledge, the dissemination of learning, and of course, building that all out into the development of projects, helping them with project development, helping them with feasibilities, with pre-feasibilities and so on. And one of the things that we are working on now, as I mentioned earlier to the colleagues in a private conversation outside, is really to do that we expect to have 4 full feasibility for 4 wind sites developed for countries at a regional level. We think some things are best if they are done at regional level, and the expectation is that this will lead project offshore. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Who has a question, remark, comment? So you do.
No. I don't have any question. I just said 5 minutes. By the way, I have a little story to tell you. I went to a big, workshop like that, big conference in, where is this already? No. Near Argentina, whatever. Yeah. And the people had like sign, box game, match, where you have women, with big boards. And so they said 10 minutes, 5 minutes, so you could miss it. So I just say 5. No. Thank you very much. I don't have anything to say.
I have a little bit of a question. I'm hoping that it's not very short. I'm not sure if I missed it because I came in late, so I apologize. I'm coming in late from lunch. The direct use, I'm not sure if we touched on the employer system, such as those. So I guess I'm asking, hoping that this is not repetitive, I'm asking about that part of the study.
It's part of the study. So at several stages, we verify all the impacts, and coral is part of what to respect. And like all renewable energy, we take care about environment. We perform environmental and social impact studies. And the good impact is that we reduce fossil fuel, because fossil fuels kills coral. In all the feasibility studies, we have this, and it will be part of the next step as we concluded this morning. We had only the overview about what are the protected areas and what is absolutely to avoid, and where we can hope to.
And I would have thought that an installation of that size would lend itself positively towards old vehicle in the ocean soon enough. Not that I'm saying let's just throw everything in there, but an installation like that, I guess what I'm asking is, as a positive towards. Again, I'm not a marine expert, so forgive me, but I'm thinking that a positive would have lent itself to probably, yeah.
Yes, I was thinking maybe one student could ask a question about education.
Okay, so when I think about renewable, my name is Shante Sherobin. I'm a student, well, a past student of SAFA. Okay. When I think about renewable, fossil fuel means less emission of greenhouse gases. So let's say let's say we are successful with using renewable energy and so less fossil fuels in the next 20 years. Let's say this is successful, your project and everything, right? With using wave energy and using wave energy. Do you believe that since bigger islands are the ones, bigger countries like America, China, and all these are the ones who contribute, use more fossil fuels, so they contribute the most to global warming. Do you think in the next 20 years, can Caribbean islands integrate and be like, hey, this is what we've been doing for the past 20 years, so that we could fight global warming? Do you believe that this could happen?
Let's let the policymaker answer that one.
It says Seraphim, what's the last name? Shervin. Yes, you did tell me before, I'm so sorry. Has already been tabled at a very high level. Has already been tabled at a very high level at the last COP in Ireland. The governments of some did get together and made that very point, but they made it from the standpoint that because of the impact Antigua and Samoa, as part of the OASIS group of countries, have sought to put before the global community the argument that these larger economies that are having the greatest impact on the carbon footprint should be paying loss and damage. As recent as last year, I believe, the United Nations General Assembly did accept the case from Samoa and have put it on the agenda. So there is a court case that is going before the International Tribunal that is seeking to indeed responsible. And I believe there's already a framework now being contemplated whereby they will put resources such that in the instances where there is an impact like the ones that we had in the Caribbean recently, Maria and Irma, that those countries could claim from that resource pool. I think the claim was made by Antigua's Prime Minister that there should be the larger companies as well who are making these damaging products should be held responsible as well, and they should pay at least one OASIS, which the Antiguan Prime Minister was a joint chair, I think, with the Prime Minister of Samoa. So the work is, all right, you can read more about it in the work that's being done at the United Nations and at COP20, which will be held in Dubai this year, COP27.
Oh, my name is Darcy and I'm from SAFA. So they recognize the problem and whatnot. So my question would be, why don't you all, as your project, you want to do, to propose, like to fund you all a certain amount? Because, I mean, they're responsible for what we, as citizens, do you all ask them or whatnot?
is the polluter should pay, right? Okay, so since Rio is what, 90, 80 something in Brazil, the 92, sorry, the principle was set. The Western countries that been, having wildlife, with 3 cars, and, doing a lot of stuff, I spend the old, carbon quota. And so now, they say to the people who didn't even read that, say, well, it's over, party is over, and you have to, the belt and, tough, right? So all the COP 21, we are on 26 or 27, this is the same thing, meaning they committed poor countries to alleviate, all this and mitigate all these consequences, in climate change, that they pay. But this is a bargain power, and this is very difficult. And, it's the same argument, you have, let me say, coal mine in China, and China is saying, hey, if you want me to reduce this, help me out. India is saying the same thing. You want me to, reduce my emission, help me out. Okay? How do you say, mining, operation. So one quick remark. How many, two ladies actually, how many of you speak another language than English? Spanish? French? Vous parlez français? By the way, you take an average, to be sure that whenever they go, they can find a job. So basically, this is the basic things, but if you think about degrees, okay, would it be bilingual degree? English, French? That's something that, if you talk about regional integration, that's something to, to be addressed, right? To give the floor to Mr. Fabian Lewis, who is from the Ministry of Infrastructure, Port, Energy, and Labor in St. Lucia. So, Mr. Lewis, would you?
Nervous. I prepared a speech. Bear with me.
We do.
It's funny. You practice a million times for one thing, and when it's your turn, you fall to pieces. So allow me to go through the speech that I put together. And I'm hoping that I capture everything that is important. Good. So participants, as we bring this Interreg EMR energy workshop to a close, let us take the time to reflect on the invaluable insights, discussions, and of course the collaborative spirits that have defined our time together. On behalf of the Ministry of Infrastructure, Transport, Physical Development, and Urban Renewable, and Marine Development, IWAC, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, ICWA Consulting, David Simmons, and Hill Associates for your presentations and active engagement and commitment to advancing the dived into the depths of the methodology, unveiling the intricacies of the legal economic feasibility study. The unveiling conclusions and recommendations will serve as beacons, guiding our path towards a more sustainable. Moreover, the outline, comprehensive proposal, and roadmap will pave the way for regional pilot projects that will shape the renewable energy landscape in the Eastern Caribbean. None of this would have been possible without the generous funding from the European Regional Development Fund under the Interreg Caribbean program, skillfully executed by, of course, the Regional Council of Guadeloupe. The Renewable Marine Energy Project, with the priority access focused on supporting the development of renewable energies, aligns perfectly with the electricity mix and enhancing the energy autonomy of St. Lucia.
experts, as well as the key stakeholders from the Europe and the Caribbean. Your presence and contributions have enriched our discussions and strengthened our collective determination. Together, we can illuminate the path together towards a brighter future. Thank you for your... I'm hoping that I hit the mark. Did I hit the mark? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice slide, by the way. Sorry about that. So, this is the end. I think this to have Mr. Honorable Melfort Nicholas, who flew from Antigua and participate and contribute to interesting issues that has to be raised at the state level. Dr. Devon Gardner, thank you very much, and you've taken this meeting. David Dawson, thank you very much for coming from Barbados. Mr. Fabian Lewis, who gracefully delivered like the nicest speech. Thank you very much. Mrs. Lindell Lebrun, Miss Lewis Community College. Thank you very much. And of course the A team, so that you have here in front of you. Karim just led the second round table. Celine and Bruno and Corinne, Thomas. Thank you very much. Wonderful, Thank you.